From WOTL Toledo, Ohio, I'm Jay Rudolph for the Community Bridge. Your life, your family, your community.
You've got to be vigilant. Check it out. Make sure it's real. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Make sure you're not being scammed at all. And if, that extra 10 or 15 minutes might save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Scams targeting families living in Ohio and around the world, for that matter, continue to evolve in both sophistication and frequency. Some criminal actors are exploiting moments of panic by posing as law enforcement or legal professionals and claiming a loved one has been arrested. In some cases, scammers are now using artificial intelligence to mimic a family member's voice, making these schemes more convincing than ever. Eddie Miller is the president of the Ohio Bail Agents Association. Eddie, can you first help us understand these types of scams that seem to be increasing in prevalence?
Yes, and first we'd like to thank you for having us on your show. To start off with, the bail scams and people who were in jail started out more than a year ago, and it started out where they were just calling people and claiming a loved one was in jail. Well, they picked up their game a little bit by using jail rosters and court documents online, finding real people in jail and also figuring out, what their charges were in that and had them down to a specific jail, and even going to the websites of those counties and finding employees of like a sheriff and saying that they're calling. So before it was just a cold call. No one was actually even in jail. Well, they learned where they could get more information, and now they have it set where they're finding real people in jail and calling them saying they can get out. Well, a lot of times these people might not be eligible for bail, and they're just calling saying, look, we can get them out. We can put an ankle monitor on them, and we're calling from the jail. And there's one of the keys that make it that it's a scam is they're having them go to a grocery store, a C-store, something like that, and get a gift card of some type, or maybe even try to get some Bitcoin and say, look, get that. And then what they try to do is get them to send the money online somewhere. And a lot of these people that are doing the scams are overseas. So they're finding ways that make them untrackable with the internet and things that they can't be followed back to. And before the people realize what's going on, they've already captured the money and moved on.
Well, Eddie, explain to us then what people can and should do to avoid becoming a victim of a scam like this.
Well, the first thing is you need to slow down a second. 5 or 10 minutes is not going to make the difference if that person's out of jail in most cases. So what you need to do is use the same resources they did. Go find a jail roster from the jail they're claiming. See if your loved one's in there. Yes, they are. Then you need to check with the clerk site and see if there's something there that says yes. Are they eligible for bail? Call a bail bondsman in your area. You can go to Google and find one. You could, I used to say you could go to the phone book, but you don't have those anymore. But you can find other resources with search engines to find a bondsman. Call the court system. Make sure they're eligible for bail. Don't call the same number you called, because then you're calling the scammer right back. And if he's, good at his job, he's going to give you the same information that's bogus.
Yeah. Well, and is it typical to get a call from a bail agent like this even, or?
Well, you might get a call or a text maybe from a bail agent, but you're not going to get one from the police. The police don't come out and make phone calls to make bail for people. So that's the first thing. If they start saying they're with the court system or the jail, they don't call and things about bail. You're either going to hear from the defendant himself or your loved one. They're going to be making the call out to you. You may receive, a text or an email from a bondsman, but, follow up on it. Make sure it's real.
Yeah, I've heard some too of where they'll just, as I said in the open, they're able to use artificial intelligence to mimic a family member's voice, and so they can, make it seem like maybe a granddaughter's calling and she's in trouble in another country. I've heard of like scams like that too, huh?
Yeah, those aren't as big as they once were. They have kind of ran their gamut on that. But yeah, but you've got to be vigilant. Check it out. Make sure it's real. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. But if you call your local bondsman, make sure that they're real. By using the Google, you can see if that address is good. Call a second one. Make sure it's, you're not being scammed at all. And if, that extra 10 or 15 minutes might save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
No kidding. What are some other scams that people need to be aware of that are out there recently?
Well, we've seen a new one here in Ohio where they're mailing things out saying that you have a parking ticket or an unpaid citation is one of the words we see. They're not real. They're sending them by text. They're sending them by email. So when you get one of these, look and see, was I there? You might have been in these major cities that they're claiming you were in, Columbus, Cleveland. But one of the ways that you can look at it, look for a license plate number. None of them have plate numbers on them. So that's one of the ways to look for it. And, you just got to, again, stop, make sure, is this real? And so they're trying to catch people off guard. We live in an electronic world today, and they're trying to use that. And with the AI, they're using everything, make sure it's real. And I know AI is very proficient in what it does. So you got to look at it, stop, slow down, and, be vigilant and try to say, is this really real?
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple minutes left, and so I'd like to hear a story, maybe a couple of them even in the time we have left, about how one of these scams affected someone, and I don't know, maybe you have a good story even of how they avoided one.
I've had in just my own office 5 or 6 where they're getting these phone calls and they are getting a little weirded out. I might use the word that, why was I going down to a Walgreens or a CVS? Why am I not going to the bondsman? And so after the shock of my loved ones in jail, I've got to help them and I got to do it right now. And it can happen. No one wants to see anybody in jail if it's your loved one. We know that, but they're working on the emotions. So I guess, we've had them where they've been in my office and I've done an application, done everything. They've gone to the car and they've come back and said, hey, there's someone on the phone, and they say they can get them out for X number of dollars to put an ankle bracelet on them. Do I really need this bond? Well, immediately when I heard what was going on, it was like, no, you're being scammed. They're not going to call from the jail. They don't put the ankle bracelets on from the jail or the EMU, electronic monitoring units and that. So, right then, this person, by coming back in and not thinking, hey, where am I at? And one of my colleagues had one where they posted a real bond. The person's supposed to get out. In the interim, they called them and said, you need to send us $300 to have the electronic monitoring put on. And so that person actually sent them the $300, and then they called them again trying to get some more money. And that's when she called the real bondsman back and we said, hey, look, you got to stop. And so, they're not afraid to call a second time. So, don't fall for it the first time, and definitely not the second time.
Yeah, because I'm sure it is very difficult to get those funds, especially if it's like a gift card or something, to get that back, huh?
Right. Once they get the money, it's very hard to get it back. And, the banks, that I understand, they're hard to, track them because they're using all the internet lines and things of that nature. The gift cards, once they're going through a clearinghouse and process, there's no insurance on it.
Yeah. Well, my thanks to Eddie Miller, the president of the Ohio Bail Agents Association, for helpful tips on avoiding scams and more information about the particular one that we're talking about here. You can go to obaa.org, obaa.org. This has been Community Bridge for Toledo, Ohio on WOTL and Family Radio.